water is a fundamental necessity for life.
Water is likely to become a major issue in the 21st century.
Some nations have too much of it, and some nations have too little of it.
And if there's not enough water to go around, and there are countries that are monopolising what little there is, other countries will fight for it.
All aspects of the environment are pretty dependent upon water.
Without water, it'd die. Everything would die. There's a whole lot of water on the planet, but most of that's in the oceans and it's too salty for us to use.
There's a lot of fresh water, but it's largely locked up in groundwater or in ice.
If this 1 litre carton was all the world's water, only 1 tablespoon, or 2.5%, is fresh water that we can use. But it isn't evenly distributed around the world. The Great Lakes of Canada and the US hold over 20% of all the world's fresh water, while in Africa, thousands of people die each year because fresh water is so scarce. All around the world, pressure on water is increasing, and by the year 2025, over 50 countries won't have enough water to meet their needs.
Water use globally is increasing for 2 reasons. One is that the increase in human population is creating the demand for more water. In addition, wealthier countries are increasingly using more water for their day-to-day living.
So how many litres of water do you use in a day?
Quite a bit. Go to the toilet a lot. Maybe it's like 50 to 70, I guess.
I reckon 100, because you gotta flush the toilet, and that's like 20 to 40 litres. You gotta shower.
Okay.
I use way too much. I have like 2 showers a day, and they're really long, 50, 70.
In Australia, the average household uses around 700 litres of water each day. Globally, we use 6 times as much water as we did 100 years ago. And how we use water has both social and environmental impacts, which we're now going to see in 3 case studies from the Middle East, China and Australia.
The world's water supplies are very limited, and that's beginning to create conflict in places like the Middle East, where there is very, very little water available.
The Middle East is a fairly arid region and it's very dry. It's got a constantly growing population, and there have been numerous conflicts between Israel and its neighbours and Israel and the Palestinians. But one of the most important ones and one of the most intractable ones is the issue of water.
After the 1967 war, Israel claimed an area called the West Bank, which was inhabited by Palestinians. Since then, the Israelis and the Palestinians have been fighting over who owns the land and who can draw water from the underground aquifer.
The Israeli policy in the West Bank since 1967 has been to prevent Arabs from digging wells, whereas Israeli settlements have been given a free rein to dig as many wells as they wish.
It's hard to say where this body of water begins and where it ends. We have more advanced capabilities than the Palestinians to draw water, and we have water needs with a low amount of water available to us, so we make use of it.
This unequal access to fresh water created great bitterness as Palestinians watched Jewish settlements flourish while theirs failed.
Some of the Jewish settlers attack Arabs and many of the Palestinians attack Israeli settlers.
Israel and Jordan have also been fighting over accessing water from the Jordan River, which crosses both nations' borders. And in many other regions throughout the Middle East, people are fighting over who has rights to which water.
Key issue is that there's not enough water to go around. The likelihood of water wars can't be ruled out, not just between Israel and its neighbours, but in other areas of the Middle East as well.
Implementations that will be unambiguous as to who has right to what and will help us solve the water issues. However, we don't know when we're going to have a dry spell. We don't know when water is going to be really scarce. So then how does one make predictions? How does one make policies regarding water when it's something that's changing, that's dynamic?
China's monsoonal climate means water supplies are unpredictable, so every major river has been dammed to make sure water is available when it is needed. The country is now in the middle of building its largest and most controversial dam, the Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River. The third longest river in the world, the Yangtze's journey begins high in the Tibetan mountains. Fed by melting snow and ice, the headwaters plunge off the plateau, then snake along a 6,500 kilometre journey before emptying into the East China Sea. The river's catchment covers over 1/5 of China. 350 million people live here and grow almost half the country's food. But the Three Gorges Dam will soon change the Yangtze's ancient course and this region forever. The dam will take 20 years to build. It will stretch for 600 kilometres and stand 185 metres high. By regulating water flows, it's hoped the dam will control flooding along the Yangtze, which claims thousands of lives each year. Around 1,800 megawatts of electricity will be generated by the project, much needed energy for a growing population. And by using hydropower instead of coal, the project is anticipated to reduce China's greenhouse gas emissions.
三峡工程呢，毕竟是世界举世瞩目的一个大工程，是吧？这个确实也存在一些比较大的困难，不能说没有困难，有困难，对吧？我自己看法，肯定的不会是一个大的灾难，而是造福人民、造福全球的一个工程。
But not everyone is celebrating the Three Gorges Dam as a major achievement.
I against the subject totally. I think the God gave the Chinese a Yangtze River, let it flow.
如果真正三峡工程安全，中国的土地本身都比较有点少，懂不懂？你想嘛，要那么好多土地的源头。
Wancheng is a major port and one of over 100 towns along the river that will disappear. Red lines mark the new water level. Once the dam is completed, everything below this line will be submerged. Like 1.5 million others, people from Wancheng will be forced to move to a new town, built at a cost of $500 million. Large dams remove water from rivers and change the timing and temperature of water flows. This affects plants, animals and people downstream. Dams can also block fish migrating upstream to breed. So in some areas, alternatives to large dams are being explored, like building more smaller dams which have less of an impact, or re-engineering existing dams with fish ladders which enable fish to swim past the dam wall. When the Three Gorges Dam project passed through China's parliament for approval, over 1/3 of delegates protested. Construction began regardless in 1994, and the protests continued.
I'm a writer in China. I used to be a journalist. I can't say nothing when they want to do...
Dai Qing published a book criticising the project. This was banned by the government, and Dai was jailed for 10 months.
We have to against this dam. But if we still live in this country, we will do our best to stop it.
Developing countries like China need sources of income and energy. But are projects on the scale of the Three Gorges Dam the most appropriate ways to achieve this? Social and political conflict are common when water use impacts directly on people's lives. In Australia, we're also starting to see the long-term impacts of water use on the environment. Australia's climate swings in unpredictable cycles of floods and droughts. Over much of the country, rainfall is scarce and erratic. To the first Europeans, the arid inland offered little hope for farming.
Oxley was an early explorer in Australia. He actually stood on the top of the Cockapara Range, which is our only pretend mountain. It's not very high. He looked out west and he said something like this: "I believe I'm the first white man to ever see this desolate landscape. But one thing I'm sure of, I'm confident I will be the last because it is not fit to support man or beast." And what I think is so remarkable and such a wonderful contrast to that observation is the landscape you now see around you. The difference being we've brought water to this landscape in the form of irrigation from the Murrumbidgee River, and you now see the cornucopia around you. You name it, if it's a temperate crop, we can grow it.
Irrigation opened the country up for farming and now grows over 1/4 of all food crops. But these gains have come at a price.
Here's a typical, really dramatic effect of the irrigation problem that we face. If we do nothing in this Murrumbidgee irrigation area, 20 to 40% of our landscape will look like this.
Irrigation leads to salinity in two ways. The salts dissolved in irrigation water add to those already in the soil, and the extra water raises the level of underground water tables, bringing these salts to the surface.
This salt is highly detrimental to plant growth. To wit, nothing grows. A few halophytes, these are plants that can stand high levels of salinity, but they're not productive plants. And in fact, if you look behind me, you can see the dead trees. So the large native trees that used to grow in this depression when it was a freshwater depression are now dead.
We rely on irrigation to grow over half the world's staple foods, but it is also salinising land at an increasing rate, making productive agricultural land virtually useless. A CSIRO project in Western New South Wales is aiming to find a solution for this problem by reusing salty wastewater from irrigation areas.
I'm standing in a crop of canola which is irrigated with water of 1200 EC. This is water that is 3 times saltier than any of our local farmers will use. Now, it's quite remarkable. This is a very, very good crop, and will yield as well as any crop in the area, but it's being irrigated with a product no one wants.
Water that has been used for irrigation is drained away from farms to the project area. Here it is used to irrigate a crop of canola, drained and used on a second and third crop. Each time the water is taken up by the crops, less is drained away and the salt content is concentrated. After the third crop, the water is so salty it's approaching seawater and is drained to a pond where saltwater fish are bred. From here it's drained to a solar pond that generates electricity and finally to evaporation basins. The concentrated salt that is left can then be collected and some of it sold.
The net effect is that we take a 9 million tonne waste product and reduce it to about 1% of its mass. It's very important that we start to think of wastewaters as a resource, and that's the aim of this experiment. Turn a waste product into a resource which can make you money.
The same idea of saving and reusing water is also driving developments in the city.
We have such a wasteful society at the moment. We have this tendency to just use something and throw it away.
Just part of everyday life, just go get a drink and nothing, you don't really think about where it comes from or where waste goes or anything. You don't really want to think about swimming in it, you know, just flush the toilet and it's gone.
People tend to focus on recycling, whether it's water or waste or something. That's really only part of the story. The most important thing is to reduce the need for water, and then to ensure that what water we do use, we reuse it.
In inner city Sydney, Michael Mobbs redesigned his house with water conservation in mind. Michael had four main ambitions.
To make all our water from the rainwater off the roof, to stop sewage leaving the site, to make all our electricity from the sun, and to stop all the stormwater leaving the site. Our water comes off the roof and goes into a rainwater tank, and it's really simple. When we turn the tap on to have a glass of water or turn the shower on, the water's just being pumped from that rainwater tank. We've run out of water 5 times in 3 years. I've gone next door with a bottle of wine and borrowed the neighbour's hose and topped it up. I'll put more storage in next year and then we'll be right.
Rainwater provides half the family's water needs. The other half comes from recycled wastewater.
So, this is the hatch where we put on all of our compost waste, all of our chicken bones, all of our fish bones, all of our grease, all of our sewage, everything comes into here.
All the waste and wastewater in the tank is broken down by worms and bugs and ends up as water that can be used again.
The water coming out of this hose is coming from the bottom of that tank. The only connection I have with the system is when I'm having a shower, just to stand under the shower and to know that the water that otherwise would end up in the Pacific Ocean waste is coming back to flush the toilet or wash the clothes is a liberating feeling. So just here, 4 metres from my daughter's bedroom, is the whole of my sewage treatment plant with no odour, and that's my boundary fence with my neighbour. So you can live here and use this backyard and not know that there's actually a little sewage treatment plant here. If you can retrofit with the gutters, but the important thing is at least put those first flush devices on. Because I have a high water table, I had to give it a concrete collar to stop it popping. They can smell and touch and look at everything. And the house gives them a living example of something that works.
Very good.
We were putting over 100,000 litres of sewage in the ocean, over 100,000 litres of stormwater into Darling Harbour. We were taking over 100,000 litres of water out of the rivers and the dam. All those things no longer happen. So you don't need many of these projects to have a really big impact on the environment.
You look at the oceans and you see all that huge expanse of water and you think, how can I possibly run out of water?
On the surface, desalinising water from the oceans seems to offer a solution for global water shortages. But this process is costly and also uses huge amounts of energy, in turn producing large amounts of carbon dioxide, a major greenhouse gas. So, for the immediate future at least, we have to live with a finite amount of fresh water and realise that how we use this water will have a huge impact on the kind of future we'll have.
Fresh water. Very much. Enjoy.